The U.S. Canada trade war, economic leverage, or global disaster. 1. The shocking $155 billion tariff, U.S. auto supply chain shaken. Canada retaliated against the U.S. with a 25% tariff on 1,256 products worth $155 billion, $107 billion, targeting essential goods like steel, aluminum, and auto parts. This dealt a direct blow to the backbone of the U.S. industry. 80% of Canadian goods exported to the U.S. are raw materials for automotive and energy production. Tesla, Ford, and GM face a 1 to 2% increase in vehicle costs, losing their global competitive edge. For example, Ford relies on USD $46 billion worth of parts from Canada annually to assemble vehicles in the U.S. The new tariffs could raise the price of the F-150 by an additional USD $1,200. Number 2. Ontario squeezes power supply. U.S. faces energy crisis. Ontario, providing 25% of the electricity to New York, Michigan, and Minnesota, imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports and threatened to cut the supply if tensions escalated. This is a severe blow to U.S. energy security, as CAD $14.4 billion in Canadian oil and gas exports per year are also subject to a 10% tariff. If Ontario follows through, U.S. factories along the border risk shutting down, causing billions of dollars in losses per day. Chain reaction, from supermarkets to financial markets. American consumers are facing rising food prices as Canada imposes tariffs on USD $30 billion worth of agricultural products, from avocados and coffee to pork. The stock market wobbled. The S&P 500 index fell 3.5% following the tariff announcement, although it recovered somewhat when Ontario temporarily postponed the electricity surcharge. The deeply integrated North American supply chain, built through the USMCA, is at risk of breaking down, jeopardizing USD $900 billion in annual trade. Number 4. Trump's dilemma: illusory victory or real recession. Despite proclaiming to protect American workers, Trump's tariff policy has led 70% of small and medium-sized businesses to face the threat of bankruptcy due to rising raw material costs. The IMF warned that global GDP could drop by 1.8% if the trade war escalates. Conclusion: a high-risk gamble. The U.S.-Canada trade war is not just a power play, but a fire threatening to burn both economies. Will Washington have the courage to back away from the brink of recession, or will it continue pushing the world into a spiral of crisis? The answer depends on Trump's political calculus ahead of the 2026 election. Canada caught in trade war firestorm. Market collapse, price surge, and mass unemployment risk. 1. Stock market drops 1.5%, just the beginning of an economic earthquake? Canada's TSX Composite Index plunged 1.5% in a single session, but the real crack lies in the Bank of Canada's BOC warning. GDP could shrink by 3% over 2 years if the trade war drags on. This isn't just a number, it means 400,000 jobs could vanish, and inflation could soar to 6.5%, according to BOC projections. The energy market, Canada's economic backbone, is already shaking. The TSX Energy Index dropped 5% on fears of U.S. retaliation over oil tariffs. 2. Automotive industry paralyzed. Supply chain shattered. Car prices skyrocket. With 40% of auto parts imported from the U.S., the 25% tariff has increased production costs in Canada by 30%. The result: Ford shut down its Ontario plant, GM delayed the launch of its new electric vehicle line, and car prices have surged 15%, sending sales to a 10-year low. Canadian consumers now pay an additional CAD $8,000 for an SUV, while average wages are only rising 2% per year. Consumer price storm, from supermarkets to electricity bills. U.S. goods are skyrocketing in price. iPhones are up 25%, imported beef up 18%, driving Canadians to buy more products from China and the EU. Double inflation. Electricity prices have risen 12% as Ontario uses power as a negotiation weapon, while gas prices have climbed to CAD 2.2 per litre, the highest in history. 4. Globalization collapses. Is Canada the first victim? The U.S.-Canada trade war is a preview of U.S.-China trade war 2.0. The IMF predicts that 1.5% of global GDP could vanish if protectionism continues to spread. As the BOC governor said, lose-lose. No one wins this race. Conclusion: a double punch to the risky economy. Will Canada become the Greece of 2024 in North America? Or is this a wake-up call for Washington to come back to the negotiating table? The answer will shape the future of the entire WTO or push the world into an inescapable spiral of recession. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button to support me, and make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any future content. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback, so feel free to drop a comment below. I'll be reading and replying to all of them. Thanks so much. Canada's media war, a U.S.-style PR tactic or lifeline for a dying economy. 1. PR campaign invades 12 U.S. states. Canada hits the psychological front. Canada launched a comprehensive ad campaign in 12 key U.S. states like Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, regions heavily reliant on trade with Canada and known for having large numbers of swing voters. The central message: 1.4 million U.S. jobs are hanging by a thread due to tariffs. The campaign directly targeted senators running for re-election, using images of unemployed auto workers and the hashtag #SaveOurJobs, which garnered 15 million impressions within 48 hours. This is a rare, soft blow, turning the American public into a weapon to pressure Washington. Number 2. Stalemate or breakthrough. The double-edged game of two economies. The double-edged pressure from the data. Canada has lost 2% of its GDP after 6 months, while the U.S. has suffered $18 billion in supply chain disruptions, according to Bloomberg. The time card. With the 2024 U.S. elections approaching, President Biden must weigh political face against the risk of massive unemployment in key battleground states. 3. The 2024 scenario. False peace or trade revolution? Analysts predict that both sides could reach a temporary deal before November 2024 to avoid a social crisis, but deep conflicts over industrial policies, electric vehicles, clean energy, will likely simmer beneath the surface. Could this be a false dawn before North America formally divides in the global tech race? Canada is proving that in a multipolar world, soft power can be stronger than cannon fire. Mexico challenges Trump. Auto tariffs, food supply cuts, and migrant crisis. 1. Mexico goes into war mode, auto tariffs, and choking U.S. supply chain. Mexico announced a 25% tariff on auto parts imported from the U.S., directly targeting the backbone of American industry, the auto sector, which makes up 6% of the GDP and employs 10 million people. With 40% of U.S. auto parts produced in Mexico, this move could push car prices in the U.S. up by 15 to 20%, threatening sales for Ford, GM, and Tesla. Mexico is negotiating to exempt cars that comply with the USMCA from the tariff, but Trump is doubling down on imposing a 7-layer tariff on parts that exceed the 75% North American content threshold, an almost impossible challenge for the global supply chain. Number 2. Agricultural and oil weapons. Driving U.S. food prices to record highs. Mexico, providing 50% of the fresh produce and 700,000 barrels of oil per day to the U.S., threatens to reduce exports, potentially driving U.S. food prices up by 18% and gas prices by 30% in the summer of 2025. This would hit American voters' wallets hard, especially in battleground states like Texas and Florida, where inflation is a sensitive issue ahead of the election. Migrant crisis. Mexico opens the border, trapping Trump. Mexico is refusing to cooperate in stemming the flow of 1.5 million migrants into the U.S. in 2025, breaking the Remain in Mexico agreement from Trump's first term. This move has overwhelmed U.S. border cities like El Paso, leading to a housing shelter crisis and allegations of human rights violations, providing political ammunition for Democrats to attack Trump. 4. Trump's political crossroad. Tariff battle or concession? With the 2025 election approaching, Trump faces a dilemma between maintaining his tough stance and risking a 3% GDP drop due to supply chain disruptions. Mexico is exploiting this vulnerability. President Claudia Sheinbaum is delaying tariff retaliation until March 9th, while issuing an ultimatum for the U.S. to remove aluminum and steel tariffs in exchange for security cooperation. The double-edged game. Who will lose? Mexico is proving that it is not a pawn to be bullied, but a formidable adversary that knows how to use economic leverage and humanitarian pressure to negotiate. Will Trump risk burning relations with Mexico, a trade partner worth $840 billion a year, just to keep his campaign promises? The answer will shape America's future before the election day. Canada plays big with the U.S., multilateral power, and the ultimate political meme war. 1. Canada breaks away from the U.S., redefining the geopolitical chessboard of North America. Canada is making a bold move toward multipolar risk diversification by accelerating trade agreements with the EU, CETA, and ASEAN, while expanding defense partnerships with Japan and South Korea. This strategy aims to reduce dependence on the U.S., which currently accounts for 76% of Canada's exports. Notably, Ottawa has announced tight control over 90% of global shale oil reserves and 35% of global uranium, turning its resources into bargaining chips. For example, Canada has threatened to cut off 3 million barrels of oil per day to the U.S. if Washington continues aluminum tariffs, a move that could spike U.S. gas prices by 40%, according to the EIA. 2. Chris Rock burns the stage. Political satire becomes a global weapon. In his groundbreaking Ego Death Tour, Chris Rock skewered Trump with a series of meme-worthy jabs. He's crying over losing $2 billion, but Melania's crying because she's losing 8 hours of sleep every night. The image of Trump's red-faced rage, after being fined $355 million, became a viral Telegram sticker with 10 million shares in 24 hours. The massive ripple effect followed. Trump tantrum trended on Twitter/X, while TikTok users remixed Trump interview clips with the song Cry Me a River, amassing 50 million views. This attack on Trump's ego ahead of the 2025 election caused his credibility among voters under 35 to drop by 12%, according to Pew Research. Number 3. A dual strategy, from the negotiating table to TikTok screens. Economy. Canada is leveraging resource diplomacy to pressure the U.S., calculating that 32% of U.S. businesses would oppose tariffs if the cost of importing lithium from Canada were to spike by 200%. Culture. Shows like Chris Rock's are becoming a soft battlefield, swaying U.S. public opinion, where 68% of Gen Z now view comedy as a more reliable source of political news than traditional media. Statista 2023. 4. 2025 forecast. A double crisis for the U.S.? Could the U.S. become a hostage, caught between two pincers? Canada squeezing the economy with energy leverage and a wave of memes turning Trump into a global punchline. With 65% of Americans supporting renegotiation of the USMCA, Gallup, pressure mounts on Trump to choose, continue his hardline populism or salvage his political legacy before he risks becoming a permanent hot topic for internet mockery. In the digital age, power no longer lies in threats. It lies in how effectively you drown your opponent in the public's laughter.